Hace 80 años, la Declaración de Filadelfia proporcionó un nuevo y poderoso impulso al mandato de la Organización Internacional del Trabajo para promover la justicia social. Estábamos en el año 1944, 25 años después de la fundación de la OIT, y la Conferencia Internacional del Trabajo de la OIT adoptó la declaración, que reafirmó sus principios fundacionales. El trabajo no es una mercancía. El progreso depende de la libertad de asociación y expresión, y la pobreza en cualquier lugar es un peligro para todos nosotros, en todas partes. La lucha contra la necesidad debe perseguirse con incesante energía. Además, la declaración reconoció la obligación de la OIT de promover programas globales para el trabajo decente y la justicia social. Ofreció la entera colaboración de la OIT a todos los organismos internacionales comprometidos en esta gran tarea. Los principios de la declaración son universales, pero deben aplicarse según el grado de desarrollo social y económico de cada región. El mundo estaba en medio de la Segunda Guerra Mundial, una guerra larga y cruel. Sus efectos también alcanzaban a América Latina y el Caribe. La Declaración de Filadelfia se basó en esta simple pero poderosa verdad. La paz duradera solo puede establecerse si se basa en la justicia social. Esa verdad es tan relevante hoy como cuando se adoptó la Declaración.
Buenos días. Me complace dar la bienvenida.
Good morning. I am happy to welcome you all to our distinguished panel and to all participants that have joined this important event. Today, May 10th of 2024, we are celebrating a significant milestone, the 80th anniversary of the Declaration of Philadelphia. This is the right time so we can revisit our commitment with its essential commitments and look for new partners so we can promote social justice and the equality of opportunities for all people. Starting with our town hall session, it is good to remind us ourselves and to reiterate some of the principles of the Declaration. Labor is not a commodity. Freedom of expression and of association are essential to sustained progress. Poverty anywhere constitutes a danger to prosperity everywhere. The war against what's required can only be done through social justice. These principles not only reflect a commitment with social justice and human rights, but they also provide a solid base for public policies on labor throughout the world. Allow me to take you 80 years back so we can place ourselves in the context of the Philadelphia Declaration. What was happening in Latin America and the Caribbean? At the time, the region was affected by the global shocks of World War II, facing trade and transport restrictions that severely limited imports of European manufacturers, which encouraged a closer economic approachment with the United States and a focus on domestic industry to meet the needs of the domestic market. Most countries had a population that was predominantly focused on agriculture, with a service sector that was developing, where we started to see the big, great migrations of people from the countryside to the city. The working age population constituted approximately half of the total population, increasing progressively to the present day. At the same time, we went through significant transformations in the political landscape, migrating from more conservative regimes to democracies, although this change did not manifest itself uniformly across the continent. Also, this period witnessed a rapid growth in the formation of unions and the consolidation of other industrial groups, signs of a society in search of greater labor equality. On the other hand, by 1944, only 4 countries in our region had adopted universal suffrage, reflecting the incipient state of political rights. Although we made these progress that are political and social, our region only had 4 fundamental ILO convention ratifications, demonstrating the need to strengthen our labor policies. Since then, we have seen significant progress, such as the ratification of fundamental conventions, the development of social protection systems, and employment policies, increased access to education, and progress in gender equality in the workplace. However, challenges continue to be substantial. Labor informality affects approximately 48% of our workforce, and in some countries, this number exceeds 70%. This underscores the urgent need to improve working conditions and increase regional productivity. In addition, it is crucial to close the gaps in the world of work, especially with regard to women's participation, which remains significantly lower than men's participation. The ILO's latest regional report, Panorama Laboral 2023, has shown that we are facing a decrease in the purchasing power of wages, a challenge that directly affects the quality of life of all workers, women and men, considering that 80% of family income comes from work. In addition to these challenges, high rates of youth unemployment persist, and a worrying situation where 1 in 5 young people does not study or work outside the home. These challenges are compounded by the emerging challenges of climate change and the advancement of technology, which require a just transition towards environmental sustainability and skills development in the face of automation and digitalization. We also face the crucial challenge of developing and financing transformative care policies that not only generate decent employment in the sector, but also strengthen special protection systems and close gender gaps in the labor market. With these persistent challenges of inequality, informality, low productivity, and violation of labor rights in Latin America and the Caribbean, I would like us to reflect on the value and relevance of the principles of the Declaration of Philadelphia today. Thank you for joining us in this important discussion. To begin, I would like to invite Manuela Tomei, Deputy Director of ILO's Governance and Human Rights Group. Thank you very much, Ana Virginia, and thank you for allowing us to be in this very important roundtable. Distinguished participants who are in this session. To answer your question, the principles that the Declaration of Philadelphia are based on are still current today. What has changed deeply, like you said so well, is how they are applied. Allow me to review some of these principles. The principle where everlasting peace can only be built based on social justice is not an old-fashioned thought, but actually the reality that injustices we see today are well rooted and they cause outrage in society and social discontent, growing issues we see in countries today. We see inequalities not only in terms of wages, but in terms of rights, opportunities, also gender issues, racial, ethnic inequalities as well. Mass migration of populations due to armed conflict, poverty, or climate change. Backpedaling or losing ground uh, in terms of poverty due to COVID-19 and other issues. Insecurity and low quality employment or precarious employment with low wages are definitely seeing a resurgence of xenophobia and issues around different institutions and leading to multilateralism. It is true that we could not have sustainable development without social justice. This is well um, put out in the 2030 agenda, focus on the SDGs and objective and or goal number 8 that establishes that we need to move forward towards generating decent employment and creating sustained economic growth that is sustainable. Labor is not a commodity. This statement is very relevant today. Labor is not an inanimate object that can just stay stagnant. Services rendered and the world of labor, the world of work, cannot be separate from the people who perform these jobs or this work. Work is often the only means of income to families in the world. And while the world of work is what we make available to other people with our skills, our efforts, and our talents. Therefore, prices and social costs are actually connected to the world of work, and we cannot leave it up to the forces of the market. That is why we need to have labor standards, international labor standards, as well as there should be a need to constantly adapt the needs to the world of work and do this in advance. So, for example, the digital revolution we are going through right now brings about great opportunities, but also risks that are unprecedented, like the possible dehumanization of the workforce. This is why we need to make sure that human beings should control artificial intelligence and how it is used. Another important and powerful principle of the Declaration is that freedom of speech and freedom of association are key in order to have sustained growth. They are a pillar of democracy as well as governance of societies. Providers, workers have to be free, have to be well represented. Tripartitism, as well as social justice. Some of these would be affected. And I think that COVID-19 underscored in a very simple way that tripartite work, collective work can definitely help to minimize the devastating effects of COVID-19 and keep afloat as much as we can, keep as many jobs as possible, and keep as many companies running. Separate from different communicators, Even if environmental issues and social issues are not fair, I mean, this is definitely a reality. And despite that, we have institutions leading social change and policy changes. We see some efforts to stifle um, freedom of association and freedom to unionize and try to change how we see tripartite efforts. Lastly, economic and social policies and the fact that their objective should be to reach social justice. This is why the Declaration of Philadelphia talks about full employment and increasing life conditions, ensuring social security benefits, appropriate life conditions, equality of opportunities when it comes to education and skills development. So the reasons why we try to do this and connect this to economic and social policies, these efforts are the same ones we saw in 1944. So social issues cannot be resolved unless we take a look at the root causes and their economic and political effects. Number two, the free market by itself will not take us to social justice, and cooperation with international organizations that are responsible for economic policies and financial policies is absolutely necessary. And today, more than ever, in order to be consistent with all this in a global scenario that is ever more interconnected.
Muchas gracias, Manuela. Cedo ahora la
Thank you very
palabra
much, Manuela. I will now give the floor to Her Honor Deborah Thomas Felix, President of the Industrial Court of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you. To answer the question, the Declaration of Philadelphia may have been signed 80 years ago, but the true litmus test of its enduring relevance is that it constitutes arguably the first international human rights declaration. In today's rapidly evolving global economy, the principles of the Declaration of Philadelphia offer a timeless guide for governments, policymakers, employers, workers, and trade unions by emphasizing the importance of social dialogue, collective bargaining, freedom of association, and the protection of workers' rights. This declaration provides a blueprint for addressing the structural issues that perpetuate inequality, informality, low productivity, and the violation of fundamental rights in Latin America and in the Caribbean, particularly in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic and amidst rapid transformations in the world of work. The principles outlined in the declaration continue to be of profound value and relevance today and serve as the linchpin for modern development and the world of work. The declaration was indeed ahead of its time when some 80 years ago, it emphasized the importance of full employment, the recognition of fundamental rights, such as essential components for sustainable economic and social development, and also that there could be no meaningful discussion of social justice without progress on racial and gender inequities, among other things. By advocating these principles, the Declaration provided and continues to provide a global framework for addressing the root causes of these challenges while promoting the importance of inclusive growth, decent work, and equitable opportunities for all individuals in the regions. As you know, countries across the globe have embraced and promoted the principles of the Declaration and have incorporated them in their law. For example, in the 1962 Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago echoes the Declaration when it speaks to the dignity of the human person, respect the principle of social justice, and it provides that labor should not be exploited or forced by economic necessity to operate in inhumane conditions. And we know the famous words of the Declaration that poverty anywhere constitutes a danger to prosperity everywhere. Listen closely, and you will hear the undiluted echo of Dr. Martin Luther King's famous clarion call for civil rights nearly 2 decades later, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. As the region grapples with the impact of technological advancements and globalization, the Declaration's focus on the human-centered approach to economic development becomes even more pertinent. By prioritizing the well-being of workers and ensuring their participation in decision-making processes, the principles of the Declaration of Philadelphia can help to navigate the challenges in the 21st century labor market while promoting inclusive and sustainable development in the region. And it remains a cornerstone for promoting inclusive economic growth, empowering workers, and fostering sustainable development. Thank you.
Muitas gracias, Débora.
Thank you very much, Deborah. I would like to invite, finally, Humberto Villasmil. He is a professor and former standards specialist of the ILO Office for the Southern Cone of Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, and I am humbled after being able to participate in such an important meeting. Philadelphia is a declaration, a formal declaration. It was also at the same time the expression of a historical trend, possibly something we will never see again after the end of the Second World War. But it was also a spirit. There was a book that was named that way a few decades ago, The Spirit of Philadelphia. The professor said that in May 10th, 1944, in Philadelphia, the first international declaration on rights was expressed, focused on universality. This is something that was adopted right after the Allies arriving in Normandy. And that declaration was also the first expression of will as we left World War II and establishing a new international world order not focused on force, but actually on rights and justice. During the centennial, a book that is a very good book, and I think essential book from Dr. Daniel Leroux. It's 100 Years of Social Policies at a World Scale. It recognizes that Philadelphia, the Declaration of Philadelphia, was a second portion for the ILO. It was a renovation of a mandate and the expression of ILO's expansion of its mandate so it could survive the end of World War II, given that there was a lot of fear during the years of the war, just like with the League of Nations. They thought ILO would not survive the end of World War II. John Wyndham, in 1939, the director, could foresee that end when he asked Wilfred Jens, maybe the biggest law specialist, and made it to director generally, one of the most important people here, that to put together this preface of work and And it reads, mostly in English, that this code should be established based on the circumstances using the testament or of the organization. And one of the most things in it was to take a look at the future. And with the League of Nations, we saw this, however, ILO survived, in my opinion, led by a declaration that not only renewed its mandate, but also convinced the world that it would have to play a role, which indeed it did, a relevant role in time and in the future. The UN Charter from 1945 cannot be explained without the Declaration of Philadelphia. That charter, just like the Declaration of Philadelphia, use its own language of a human rights declaration, which would open or pave the road for human rights in December 1948. From the paragraphs from the declaration, and that are very significant right now, I would highlight two of them. Labor is not a commodity. This ratified a principle that was already in the Versailles Rights Declaration with the International Labor Organization. And the second one is that freedom of association and of association are essential to sustained progress. So these freedoms of expression and of association were key in a democracy model, a participative democracy model that was based on open dialogue between independent stakeholders. But at the same time, that reference to equality expressed in universal terms in a declaration ratifies that ILO's principles are fully applicable to all positions. I ran out of time. I want to be respectful of the time allotted to my session, but I would like to say that the Declaration of Philadelphia was none other than the lens through which ILO saw the world towards the end of World War II and ratified its reason for existing, which will continue to be its reason for existing, that peace can only be achieved with social justice, which is the foundation of the International Labor Organization's existence. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the three of you. Up next, we will play a video that gathers the voices of the main stakeholders of the world of work in the region.
Debemos recordar que es importante esta conmemoración para tener en cuenta que hay que eliminar todas las formas de violencia y acoso en el lugar de trabajo, que el trabajo infantil, el trabajo forzado no se pueden seguir permitiendo. Esta declaración es una herramienta importante para seguir avanzando en el reconocimiento de los derechos de las trabajadoras domésticas en el mundo.
La Declaración de Filadelfia es un documento muy actual, un documento que siento que se vincula con los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible, que nos habla del derecho a una vida digna, que nos habla de la pobreza, nos habla de los diferentes empleos, del derecho a asociarse, ¿no? De cómo las personas pueden elegir el tipo de empleo y ahí pienso en las personas con discapacidad, que lamentablemente muchas veces nos encasillan en ciertos perfiles, en que algunos puestos de trabajo tendrían que ser para algunas personas con discapacidad y otros para otras personas con discapacidad, cuando en realidad todos los empleos deberían ser para cualquier persona, reconociendo la diversidad, reconociendo que se debe garantizar el acceso y que todos podemos participar en igualdad de condiciones, que una persona con discapacidad puede salir de la pobreza desde el momento en que participa en el desarrollo económico, en que participa en igualdad de condiciones con otra persona en el puesto laboral.
Yo creo que una de las cosas más importantes en estos 80 años que se cumple de la Declaración de Filadelfia es seguir como sindicatos, seguir fomentando el trabajo decente, seguir fomentando el trabajo digno, que es algo que nos ha recomendado la Organización Internacional del Trabajo y que nunca ha dejado de empujarnos a que todos vayamos juntos construyendo un trabajo decente y digno para las personas, tanto las personas en cada país como las personas en movilidad. Todos tenemos derechos y creo que en estos 80 años lo seguimos recordando y seguimos reforzando como organizaciones sindicales que esto se logre.
Esta declaración, hecha en 1944, fue un faro de esperanza y solidaridad en tiempos de guerra, abogando por el pleno empleo, la protección social y el diálogo social, principios fundamentales que aún guían las políticas laborales y sociales en el mundo. Los países de América Latina y el Caribe se encuentran sumidos en 3 trampas del desarrollo: bajo crecimiento, alta desigualdad y baja movilidad social, y bajas capacidades institucionales y de gobernanza. Mercados laborales dinámicos y sistemas educativos y de formación profesional eficaces son ingredientes esenciales para salir de las primeras 2 trampas. Y el diálogo social es esencial para salir de todas ellas. La Declaración de Filadelfia sigue ayudando a marcar el norte en nuestros esfuerzos desde CEPAL para construir un futuro más productivo, inclusivo y sostenible para todos. Muchas gracias.
La Declaración de Filadelfia del año 1944 estableció 4 principios fundamentales para el mundo del trabajo que hoy son la carta de navegación para la Organización Internacional del Trabajo y, por supuesto, para la constitucionalización del derecho laboral en Colombia. Esta declaración nos permitió que en nuestra carta política tengamos los principios rectores del derecho laboral y que, por supuesto, se haya agregado el derecho a la libre asociación sindical como un derecho fundamental en nuestro artículo 39. Hoy es lo que nos permite exigir condiciones laborales dignas, nos permite hablar de trabajo decente y nos permite establecer y ejecutar nuestro derecho de asociación sindical con las garantías que éste tiene: huelga, negociación colectiva y libertad de asociación sindical.
Es importante recordar el trabajo de la Organización Internacional del Trabajo en su desempeño al poder posicionar a trabajadores, velar por los derechos de los trabajadores en todo el mundo y sobre todo pensando en toda la población migrante que se ha desplazado en los últimos años a causa de diferentes motivos. También pensando un poco en todas aquellas personas cuyos trabajos se ven posiblemente amenazados por una nueva ola tecnológica. Y creo que es importante también profundizar siempre en el valor que tienen los migrantes en sus sociedades de acogida. Sociedades que antes no habían sido permeadas y que ahora se pueden enfrentar a una nueva perspectiva del mundo para trabajar juntos por un mejor futuro.
La Declaración de Filadelfia es súper importante porque nos da las herramientas como mujeres jóvenes a poder buscar un futuro laboral con más equidad, con menos discriminación, y también nos da las herramientas suficientes para luchar por un ambiente laboral que defienda nuestros derechos y también que nos dé la oportunidad de hablar y que nuestra voz sea escuchada, y no solo sea escuchada, sino que también sea tomada en cuenta.
Celebramos el 80 aniversario de la Declaración de Filadelfia, que lleva a la OIT a ponerse a tono con la doctrina de derechos humanos en cuanto incorpora esta doctrina en función del mundo del trabajo, donde todos los seres humanos son iguales en función de su dignidad, pero también en cuanto a la libertad del trabajo y de asociación.
Como emprendedora, la formalización y la adopción de principios laborales promovidos por la OIT pueden beneficiar a las empresas que buscan transitar la economía formal de diversas maneras, como por ejemplo accesos a mercados y recursos financieros. Además, los beneficios tangibles, la formalización y adopción de principios laborales también pueden generar beneficios intangibles, como pueden incluir la mayor productividad, reducción de la rotación del personal y mayor innovación.
El 10 de mayo de 1944 fue adoptada la Declaración de Filadelfia, que le dio una nueva carta a la Organización Internacional del Trabajo. La Declaración de Filadelfia incorpora todos los datos del orden jurídico político de la posguerra. Esto hace que los Principios tradicionales de la OIT relacionados con conseguir el progreso económico de la mano de la justicia social a través de reglas claras, puedan sumarse en una visión en la cual el mundo instauró como uno de sus pilares los derechos humanos. Desde entonces, normas internacionales del trabajo y derechos humanos en el ámbito internacional crecen y tejen juntos para una mejor justicia social, para un propósito actual de trabajo decente en un mundo inclusivo con equidad de género.
Las naciones y pueblos originarios en Colombia han tenido un soporte trascendental en los convenios internacionales de la Organización Internacional del Trabajo. La Declaración de Filadelfia es parte importante, muy especial y en particular en estos 2 años de gobierno, donde se está planteando el sistema pensional para los pueblos originarios. Es un proyecto de avance, pero es el cumplimiento de esos mandatos y de esas recomendaciones de la OIT fundamentadas en la Declaración de Filadelfia. Eso nos ha permitido avanzar en los derechos laborales, en los derechos de la salud y de los derechos económicos, sociales y culturales de todos los pueblos.
La Declaración de Filadelfia establece un principio fundamental. El trabajo no es una mercancía. Nos dice que el ser humano que trabaja y tiene derechos no puede ser tratado como mercancía. Con ello hace una distinción esencial entre el costo laboral y el valor del trabajo en la sociedad, conforme a las normas de la OIT. Y de ahí surge la noción que la calidad del trabajo define de tantas maneras la calidad de una sociedad. En base a estas orientaciones, el concepto de trabajo decente de la OIT vincula las necesidades productivas con el valor y significado social del trabajo. ¿Por qué el trabajo decente? Porque es fuente de dignidad personal, es fuente de estabilidad en las familias y la convivencia, es fuente de cohesión social y también es fuente de mayor productividad. Consecuencia de todo esto es fuente de justicia social y paz en la sociedad. Recordamos la Declaración de Filadelfia para persistir en la lucha por la dignidad en el trabajo.
After listening to these voices, I would like to invite our speakers once again now so we can talk about priority actions for Latin America and the Caribbean so we can promote social justice and keep the declaration spirit current. I'll hand over the floor to Manuela Tomei. Thank you, Ana Virginia. I think that, like in many of the videos that have been presented to us, they focus on reinforcing social dialogue and tripartitism, democratic governance of places of work, and putting together social policies and economic policies that are inclusive. They all have to be based on respect of freedom of association and social stakeholders, so we can put together policies that have the support and the legality and legitimacy that is necessary so we can bring about transformations that are important and necessary and do it in a sustained manner. This also goes for employers and workers in their organizations. There is an adaptation process they have to go through, given the ever-changing realities of the world, adapt their services, their charters or bylaws, and their different agendas to cover different topics and priorities and needs in a labor force that is ever more fragmented and separated in a world of work that is very diverse. The other issue I think is very important to highlight is the need for discussing informality and doing it in a determined way. This implies promoting macroeconomic policies, industrial policies that go hand in hand with labor market policies and that consider fundamental rights in the place of work, in the workplace. This is the only way we will be able to ensure a transformation of the productive culture of economies in Latin America and try to reduce or get rid of that productivity stagnation and rampant informality. Another important thing that I would like to touch on is talk about low wages so we can reduce inequality and poverty in Latin America. There has been good progress when it comes to minimum wages in the region. We want to continue to make progress, focusing on collective bargaining. And lastly, one item that has been of interest of tripartite members in ILO is everything related to vital wages. So think about how to put together salary policies or wage policies so we can hopefully generate needs for growth, respecting workers. And yes, I'll leave aside and considering some of the economic aspects of it. As part of the last portion of the analysis, I would like to highlight the importance of securing or ensuring that those who have historically been last in line are not left behind. And I would like to reference indigenous populations in the region. They represent an important percentage of the population in the region. Obviously, their importance will vary across different countries, but their common denominator is a disadvantaged situation. They have been left behind. And in order to face all the challenges, including climate change, it is important to establish mechanisms of participation and consultation with indigenous populations. There is a very strong tool, Convention 169, which was recently ratified by 15 countries in the region. And we definitely need to focus on it. And lastly, I would like to highlight the importance of investing in economies of care. Economies of care are definitely key so we can face demographic challenges, not only demographic changes, but also investing in economies of care means investing in the future workforce, a workforce that is more educated and more prepared so they can face the challenges of the world of work. Economies of care and investing on them means protecting the rights of domestic workers and their sector, but also ensuring a better distribution of the workload when it comes to unpaid labor, to care labor, women and men, and everyone in society. And this is a gender equality item that will continue to see more growth, and we want to make it more inclusive. Thank you. Thank you, Manuela. Now we will give the turn to Her Honor Deborah Thomas Felix. Go ahead, Deborah. You have the floor.
Thank you. I'm really happy that we are discussing not only the Declaration of Philadelphia, but the priority actions for the region. One of the key priority action in my mind is the investment in education and skill development. There is a need to enhance policies to provide accessible and quality education, vocational training, and lifelong learning opportunities for all individuals, including those and especially those for marginalized communities, to enhance their employability and economic opportunities. The second priority action, which I think we have been speaking about, and it's very important, is to implement policies and programs to reduce informal employment, and also to committed action to improve working conditions and to ensure decent wage benefits and social protection for all workers, including those in the informal sector. There's a need also to enhance labor market inspection systems throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. And there's a need to strengthen collective bargaining mechanism and also to promote tripartite dialogue among governments, employers, and workers and their trade unions to address labor market challenges and to promote fair market practice. I think if we were to look for examples in the region on tripartite dialogues and tripartite commissions throughout the Caribbean and Latin America, we could look at Costa Rica, where the tripartism is very alive, and also Barbados, which is one of the countries in the Caribbean where tripartism is very alive and important. There's a need to strengthen legal frameworks and institutions to protect human rights, including freedom of expression, freedom of association, and freedom of assembly. We know of incidents where the safety of journalists, human rights activists, trade union leaders, etc. in the region, that has been an issue. And so there's a need to strengthen the system and provide safety for them. There's also a need for promoting gender equality and inclusion and addressing income equality and poverty. My colleague just spoke to lengths about that, so I will not speak much about that. One of the things that I am concerned about, and I think it should be a priority action, is enhancing democratic governance and accountability throughout the regions, because as we know, those are pillars of democracy. And there is a need to promote transparent accountability and the rule of law and combating corruption in the region to ensure responsive and inclusive governance with respect to human rights and to promote social justice for all. As my colleague has just said, the fostering of sustainable economic development by promoting inclusive and sustainable economic growth through investment in infrastructure, innovation, and productive sectors, while ensuring environmentally sustainable and resilience to climate change. Those are some of the priority actions, and I know I've gone through them very quickly, but those are some of the priority actions I think as a region we need to focus on if we want to commit and continue to commit to the ideals of the Declaration of Philadelphia and to promote social justice in Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. I would like to invite Humberto Villasmil.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Well, truly, the question is a very important question. And if I may, I would like to answer that, giving my very personal opinion. If the Declaration of Philadelphia was a spirit, and this is how I see it, put us in that spirit, we would like to go back to that spirit in that great declaration that is turning 80 years now. It had 5 basic principles that are still current today. First is that long lasting peace can only happen with social justice, free liberties, equality of opportunities, economic equalities. Number 2, reiterate that labor is not a commodity. It is necessary that we think about not the point of view focused on slavery with Convention 29 that focused on back then, but actually forced labor. And about that, I should highlight the significance of a standardization instrument that ILO had, which was great, which was Protocol 2014 out of that Convention 29. The third principle, workers and employers should be able to exercise their freedom of expression and of association and freedom to unionize. This is the core of a labor relations model, which is the only one that ILO has been able and should be able to prophesize in its model. Work relations that are democratic. That is why, if we understand that freedom of association is the key to good work relations, then I would like to highlight under that the preview of Convention 87, and not by chance, highlights literally and in a very relevant way, they quote the Declaration of Philadelphia. And in other words, Convention 89 without the Declaration of Philadelphia could possibly not make sense. The second reflection in my time, I would like to ratify the value and talk about the value and the sense of tripartitism, just like the Declaration of Philadelphia expressed. The fight against social justice or social injustices should be energic, together with ILO mandates. The Declaration of Philadelphia, that was incorporated as part of ILO's Constitution in 1946, at the time, in my opinion, took us to put into the Constitution what social dialogue seeks to do. And lastly, and I think this is a key idea in the text of the Declaration, we cannot separate rights and development, which is clearly, explicitly paraphrased in the paragraphs of the Declaration of Philadelphia, where it said, and I will read, the true development tries to end discrimination and forced labor. This is the philosophy of the organization that guided us after the end of World War II and led it to go through what some call the golden age or 30 glorious years, as some call them. Thank you very much to our 3 speakers for participating and sharing your perspectives with us on this very important topic about the world of work in our region. A declaration that in its anniversary still has its principles mentioned and listing challenges and issues in the world of work. This leads us to witness how important it is. The Declaration of Philadelphia was ahead of its time, just like Judge Deborah said, putting together a sustainable development concept, just like Manuela said, where development, environmental sustainability, and social justice meet, and they are all just as key, making sure that no one is left behind. The spirit of the Declaration of Philadelphia, just like Humberto said, continues to be present and current today. When there was a global coalition launch for social justice, when ILO did this, it was attempting to defend and exchange experiences and reiterate in our new circle express the key value of the organization, and that is social justice. To finish, we will listen to a quick message from ILO's Director General commemorating the 80 years of the Declaration of Philadelphia.
80 years ago today, the Declaration of Philadelphia gave a powerful new impetus to the ILO's mandate to promote social justice. The year was 1944, and the Declaration reaffirmed our founding principles. Labor is not a commodity. Progress depends on freedom of association and expression. And poverty anywhere is a danger to all of us everywhere. The world was in the midst of World War II, a long and cruel war, and the Philadelphia Declaration rested on this simple but powerful truth. Lasting peace can be established only if it is based on social justice. That truth is as relevant today as it was when the Declaration was written, as we, once again, face a pivotal moment for humankind. It is more relevant than ever in the face of conflict, rising inequality, a climate emergency, and a global economic downturn. Rooted in human rights for all, the values embedded in the Philadelphia Declaration remain at the forefront of our work as we continue to fight social injustice, as we continue to advance labor rights, and as we continue to work to bring about inclusive and productive economies and sustainable societies. And as we reflect on the Philadelphia Declaration's importance 8 decades later, equal rights and opportunities must be the central aim of national and international policies and actions. Together, we must work towards a future based on human dignity, equality, solidarity, and freedom. Without these values, there can be no social justice. And without social justice, there can be no peace.
Com isto, damos por concluído el evento.
With this, we have finished with our event. Thank you very much for joining us.